Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sips and Sets, the podcast. I'm your host, Nina Silic, and today we are doing something a little bit different. But before we do, firstly, I know this podcast is pretty new and I've been blown away by the feedback and the support. So I wanted to do something a little different today. So, firstly, thank you guys who have been supporting. And if you do have any topic requests, or any episode requests of what you want talked about or covered, always make sure you either DM me on Instagram or drop it in the comments below. Always open to hear some suggestions there. But today I want to do something a little bit different than what I have been doing so far. Today I'm going to give you guys a bit of an insight into the Thrive 365 Academy. So this week we had a Q&A call where some of the members from the Thrive 365 Academy submitted some additional questions on top of what they would typically submit with their check-ins. We want to add some more deep dive kind of question and answers every single week. So this week we did a deep dive and I really loved some of the topics that came up this week. So I wanted to share it with all of you to just kind of spread more insight and knowledge into some of the topics we talk about within the Academy and to hopefully give you guys some extra value and see if it helps some of you on your journey as well. So let's dive in. I do have some questions that have been in submitted in the type form this week, as well as some topics that have been kind of recurring. So I'm going to go over a few of those today. First question, some of them show me who it is, some of them don't. First question is Kristen, who's okay. So Kristen's like context, like she's lost quite a lot of weight over time. She's had a fantastic fat loss journey, starting basically from scratch. And then we've, had some huge results over time that we've worked together. And now we've just started a reverse diet recently. So it's very evident that Kristen has made some huge changes in her life. So I think that context really applies to like the question. So it'll make a little bit more sense. So Kristen has asked, over time, now that I have lost some weight, I think some is an understanding statement, like quite a lot. She's done an amazing job. Have had people ask me for advice on weight management, or they share their own problems with fat loss. A lot of what I see people do is actually causing them to put on more weight, or it's not sustainable with their lifestyle. It doesn't usually bother me, but sometimes it comes from someone closer, like family member or a close friend. How much do you share or give advice when you are asked? And how hard is it for you to see loved ones choosing behaviors that are totally opposite of what their goals are? I don't think there's a right way to answer this one. I think I'm going to share with you like my personal experience and what I tend to do. I think it's a little different now that I am a coach full time and this is my business to help people. So how I approach it now is like a little bit different to what I used to do. But prior to being a coach, I'm naturally that. And I know Kristen is this type of person too, like that helper, the empath. I just want to help everybody. And sometimes that is really difficult because sometimes you get people that are, I call them assholes. They ask a lot of advice, but they never implement anything. Like you never see them take action, right? And that's where I'd encourage you to look for people who are they actually taking your advice on board and implementing it, or are they just asking you the same stuff every single time and not making a change? Um, and if somebody like I've had people where I've just shared the basic stuff, like at the end of the day, everyone needs the basics, right? Or you might just ask prompting questions. So I might I've shared with some people before, particularly my hairdressers I've had in the past. I've always shared small stuff because they ask, and I'm like, yeah, you just need to focus on starting out with some protein in each meal and just really basic things that I've just suggested that I didn't think anything of. And then they've gone away and implemented it and seen a drastic change to their lifestyle, which they're like, I'm blown away by. But then you get some people who you'll tell them all the things and they do nothing. And I would just kind of firstly have you try to distinguish what type of person you're speaking to and how much energy to then put into that person, because that is really tough when you're like, I'm trying to help you, but you're not doing anything. My mom, bless her cotton socks, love my mom, but my whole life I've she's asked me to help her, and I can give her everything, all the advice, the programs that she doesn't implement. And I've tried to help her, and I'm not the person for her. So it is difficult sometimes, I think more difficult when you are trying to help family or people really close to you, because they maybe won't take it as seriously. Like that's something to kind of think about as well. If it's really putting somebody at risk, the way I would approach it is this. Now I approach things a little differently, and I might give some basic info, and if it's a friend or a loved one, I always get everybody on a call. I'm like, let's make it a formal call, and then I ask them like, hey, do you just want advice as a friend on this call, or do you actually want to take things more seriously and really make a change? And then I take them through more of a call that most of you guys had with me initially, right? Like that initial deep dive proper call, and with the um option to like offer a specific program that I think would help. So you guys aren't coaches, so it's a little different, right? So I I would approach it like this. If you really think it's impacting someone's health and long-term health, and you just see it being like this vicious cycle, it may be worth pulling them aside. And rather than saying, hey, like, you're doing this wrong, right? Sometimes it can be really helpful to ask some questions. And you guys see me do this in your check-ins all the time, where it's more prompting questions to get the person to realize what they're doing isn't working. So I'm not going to sit here and tell that person that what they're doing isn't working, even though Kristen clearly can see it's like, this is not working for you. This is not okay. Unless it was really causing harm. And then I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I be direct with you? Like, I've seen what you're doing is really going to impact you negatively. If it's really, really kind of hurting that person, like, I think that's a different type of conversation. But then that I would start with always asking permission, right? Always asking permission to give the advice and say, hey, do you mind if I'm really direct with you about your health and fitness? I can see some things that aren't working for you. Do you mind if I give you some advice? So always ask permission first, no matter what. Like always, and someone might just be like, no, I'm good. Right. But even if they're coming to you for help, ask the permission. I think that's a really respectful way to approach those conversations. But then you could say, well, hey, I've noticed you're doing, let's say, what have you said in your question? Let's just pick up behavior. You said maybe lifestyle. Let's say they're like cutting out carbs or something completely, or doing keto, which keto's fine, but for most people it's not sustainable. Or you see it like they're just starving themselves and then overeating, right? That's a pretty common thing we see in a lot of people. You might just say to them, hey, like I've noticed, or ask them, hey, what are you doing right now? And they might say, well, I'm like starving myself Monday to Friday, then overeating the whole weekend, for example. And then you might say, well, how is that making you feel? So then they will tell you, and they'll go, oh, that I feel terrible. Like I keep losing weight, but then it's not working. I gain it back. So they're telling you, hey, this is my problem. And then you might, if it's like a simple thing, like simple advice, do you mind if I give you some advice on your health and fitness as a friend? Or from a place of like, I'm caring for you, or my loved one, like family member. And then you can give them some basic advice. Like how much advice you want to give them is really up to you, like how much energy you're able to spend, whether you're able to help, or if you really think that that person really needs to make a serious change, I'm always here. Like I know it's difficult. I don't want to like, push anybody into coaching. That's never my intention. It's more like helping having a conversation. You can always connect them with me and say, hey, like I'm working with this person. This is how it changed my life. I can give you some advice now, but if you really want to take it more seriously, like it might be worth them doing that and just having a conversation with me or whoever you think is a good fit for them, right? So I just think advice is one thing, but what I've seen time and time and time again is when people put value on something, they tend to take it more seriously. So if someone pays for a program or invests money into something, like all of you guys invested into this program, and you take it seriously because it's an investment. It's not a $50 program. You know what I mean? It's you get like you're getting your investment worth if you're putting in the effort and you're putting in the time and the communication. But you put value on that. So that's why you do check in every week. You do want to make progress. You do communicate. You do use the resources, right? Because you've invested the money. Whereas if it was free, maybe a couple of you might, well, all of you guys are pretty awesome. So I'm sure you probably would take good advantage of it if it was free. But you're less likely to stick to it for more than a couple of weeks if it's free. Like, for example, I run a free challenge every 6 to 8 weeks. And I promise you, most of those people last a couple of days and then they stop because it's free. So the value isn't there. So that's just something else to consider. So again, I don't have a specific answer for this question. It's more those things for you to kind of think about and consider. How much advice you want to give is completely up to you. Like, give as much as you want to give, as much as you want to help. I don't see anything wrong with that. But if you still keep seeing that person stuck, it might be a question of, hey, like, I can see you are struggling to implement the advice. I think that's a big thing, right? It's like all of you guys, most of you, and even me, I scroll through Instagram and it's a million different types of fitness advice now. It's like so much out there that's just BS. And now all of you are getting more and more knowledgeable every week. But think about when you first started health and fitness and you just started getting into it and you look at all of that information and you don't know what's right or wrong. It's all overwhelming. So no wonder it's difficult for people to implement, right? And implementation is the biggest problem. Like, how many of you on our initial call were like, Nina, I know what to do, I just can't do it. I hear it all the time, all the time. So sometimes it's not the knowledge too. Like, you might give the advice, but it's their ability to implement with their life. And how does that look? What does that look like for them? That can be the challenge. So again, any follow-up questions on this, Kristen? I think we can have more of a chat about it in Telegram in the group. But I think it's wonderful that you care about the people close to you and you want to help them. Again, help them as much as you feel you can. And if it's at a point where they're not making a change, then it might be time to like offer them advice to, take it more seriously, or, share your story and your experience and the things you've learned, because you're a completely different person in a year than what you were. And it's incredible to see. So it's just maybe they're seeing that change and going, wow, like, look what she's achieved. I want to do that, but maybe they're scared. So there's a lot of factors there, but hopefully that kind of helps approach the situation a little bit better. That was a long answer. But that was a really good question. Okay. You know what's funny? A topic that comes up so much in your check-in forms. I have everything listed here. I have like 200, like a couple, how many? How many questions do I have here? Topics, like 100 more. How many? Yeah, but literally 100, hit 100. Um, One that keeps coming up time and time again is, Nina, show us your day in your life. Guys, day in my life is chaos. It's different every day. So that's why I don't really share it on Instagram. It's like literally different every day. But since you guys have requested it, it is different. But let me share with you, like, intimately, real quick, what a day in the life looks like, just to be like super transparent with you guys right now. And it's ever changing. So at the end of the day, I am a working mom with my own business. Obviously, that's why you guys are all here. And I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. So right now it's the summer break here in the US. So no school. My daughter was in preschool. She's going to go into kindergarten. So she went from 2.5 hours a day at preschool. She will start a full day of school at the end of August. So that's going to be massive. Mixed feelings about that one, but massive for me in terms of like time. And then my little one will go into some form of care during that time, a few days a week. But right now, the summer. So right now, what's really challenging during the summer is consistent babysitting. So things are different every day. It's like the summer, like, it's really difficult to find people who are consistent or don't already have like a full-time nannying gig, and all of that jazz. So I do have my wonderful mother-in-law that comes every second week, sometimes not every second, but she'll skip 2 weeks and come for a week because she lives a few hours away. So that's amazing. And that's why you guys see me smash out so much those weeks. And it's like, okay, go on ham. But sometimes I can't get a sitter, and or I'll have a sitter here and there in the day, or I just can't get one at all. So my day can literally look like, if I have a sitter or her here, It's like typically get up at about 6 a.m., smash out a couple of hours of work, with the kids for a couple of hours, and then I would try to squeeze in the gym somewhere in there in the morning. And then the rest of the day come back and I'm literally just like work, 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 work as much as I can until the evening. And then it's time with the kids and then try to wrap up any more stuff for the business in the late evening. Like that's literally a jam it in. And then if I don't have anyone here with the kiddos, my kiddos, which I freaking love time with my kids, but stressful juggling both. Then it's literally I get up, I'm not a morning person. I'm going to admit this. If you're not a morning person, it's okay. I'm not a morning person at all. Like I've never really have been. So I've always that night owl that stays up and is productive at night. But with little kids that wake you up at the crack of dawn, that's not really ideal. So I'm trying to get up earlier and earlier in the morning. So when it's just me and the girls, because it happens sometimes, I'll get up at 5 or 6, do as much as I can until one of them wakes up. Then we do like breakfast, some time and like some quality time in the morning, lots of cuddles and that kind of fun stuff. Breakfast. Then we go to the gym. They're in the kids club for 1 to 2 hours, depending on what time we get there. I'll train and do some work in that time if there's time. I literally spend the rest of the day with them. Like either we go do fun activity or we come home for a little bit, like depending on their mood and whatever else is going on. Cook dinner, cook lunch, all the stuff. And then my husband gets home, depends. His schedule's all over the place which is like extra frustrating. So then he'll get home. Depends. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 8. I don't know, right? We work it out. He Wednesdays and Thursdays now. I'm like, you have to be home by 8 because I have our calls. You have to be. So that's working well so far. So, and then since he's home, we have like an hour together as a family. And then I'm like, okay, bye, back into my office to go. And then I'll pause for bedtime, then back into the office and it's a late night. So it's frustrating that there's no consistency there. But I think what you guys are trying to see is like, how am I doing my meals? How am I doing my steps? How am I doing all of those things? And I promise all of you that I am practicing the same daily basic habits as you all are. I'm aiming for 3 meals a day with protein in my meals, a high protein snack. I'm aiming for a step goal, like trying to get a minimum amount of steps. For me, that's 8,000 right now, bare minimum, and aiming for over 10. Like that's the goal. And where we're at right now today, like at 5. I hit 10 yesterday after being at this time, it was like at 4. So I just have to go for a walk later, or I have a walking desk over there. So we'll get that done. And water intake, like I promise you, they're the basic things I try to focus on every single day of my existence. And then also life happens, I get stressed and I try to implement like my stress management activities. And then also, if I do still get urges as well to overeat, or I'm naturally a stress eater at heart, my whole life, emotional eater. So I always still am implementing pausing, taking a pause, distraction tasks, bringing the awareness to how I feel during a meal. Am I actually hungry or am I just exhausted and haven't slept? All of those things, you guys, that we talk about in your check-ins every week, I'm doing every day. So that's kind of what a day in the life looks like. It's a bit of a shamble, but maybe I'll share some soon if you guys request them. If you guys watch this back and in Telegram you want to really see, I'll do my best. I'm just trying to yeah, it's a little crazy right now with things, but I freaking love what I do. So we're here, we're making it work, right? And as a mom, like a lot of you guys are moms in this program, it's wild. It's a jungle out there, like I said the other day. It's wild, like trying to have a set schedule for everything, right? We can have a set routine, but kids are unpredictable. It's really difficult. Sometimes it just does not go to plan. So you just have to be adaptable. And that's why I focus on how do I adapt? What's plan B? What's plan C? Like that's what it really looks like. Okay. I just wanted to address that for you guys. It's come up so many times and I just keep thinking, oh, I just don't know when I'm going to film this because it's crazy. But that's what kind of things look like right now. So hopefully that helps give some insight. I know a couple of you have said like that you want to see my day-to-day stuff on like Instagram because it helps you feel like we're all in it together. I promise you when I tell you we're all in it together, and I have made a note of that and started this week really sharing more nitty-gritty stuff of every day of everything. So hopefully that helps. So always welcome to your feedback on that, you guys. Okay, so next question or next topic, let me see. Ways to get rid of the lower belly fat pooch. If you're a mom and you've had babies, you know what I'm talking about. Pooch, wait, pooch or fupa, they're two different things, which is so stupid how it's called a fupa or someone's given a name to like just basically any kind of extra body fat up above your like pelvic bone, right? It's so silly. Or that kind of mom like body fat just kind of sitting in your lower abdomen. I don't think it's a mom pooch or anything. I just think sometimes we store body fat there. After pregnancy, that can look a little different depending on your core and pelvic floor. But um it depends if you're referring to the belly fat there. If it's more belly fat, right? Like if it's more distended and it's you can just do more like inner core work. It could be to do with your pelvic floor potentially. That's not an area of my expertise, but it may be worth seeing then a pelvic floor, a women's pelvic floor kind of physical therapist if you feel like, especially if you have any incontinence or anything like that. And that can be also linked to like if you're always kind of not bloated, but have that bump on the bottom. Sometimes it can be linked to pelvic floor. So it just really depends. But if it's more belly fat, at the end of the day, you cannot spot reduce body fat anywhere. So for me personally, I've always stored abdominal fat in my lower abdomen the most, and that's the hardest place for it to go for me. So I have to get pretty lean for that to completely go. That's just my body type, my genetics have always been like that. I still look like I have a flat stomach, but it's always there if like I sit down, and that's just me. And some people don't really store much body fat there. I think so you have to look at it that way. So if you're trying to get less body fat over your abdominal area, then you have to look at reducing body fat everywhere, unfortunately. Something to look out for is if you are chronically stressed or you're someone who works in a very high stress job or you just feel stressed all the time, that will make your body produce more cortisol, which is like a stress hormone. What that does, what that can change, it's not going to stop you from being able to lose fat, but it's sometimes it can change our body fat distribution and it be more focused on the abdominal and love handle area. So that's something to look out for. If you're like, I'm really stressed, have been really stressed for a while, and I'm noticing storing more fat in my abdominal area, but not so much anywhere else compared to usual. I mean, that could be some red flag for you to kind of look at your overall health and blood work. But yeah, body fat loss, we can't spot reduce, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, I'd love if whoever's asked that question or put up that topic, comment on that in Telegram and we can kind of elaborate a little bit more on that discussion. I think it would be great. How to track when you eat out and what to eat when you are out and hungry. This is, I think we need to do a training on this. I might do that this week, actually. I'm still deciding on this week's training topic, but this one definitely needs like a full training on its own that I think we'll dive into. But let me kind of share with you really quick my first thoughts around this. So I'm gonna, it's hard because it's like eating out. What does that mean? That could be anything. There's so many options, right? But let's just choose. I'm gonna choose because everyone knows Chipotle, right? Let's choose our Chipotle burrito bowl, for example. Like, how do we track that? Like, what does that look like? Or like any kind of salad bowl, or even like a sandwich. Let's say you get like a sub or something somewhere. So this is how I personally like to do it. So rather than let's say inputting into your MyFitnessPal Chipotle burrito bowl, chicken burrito bowl, I mean, it just really depends how someone builds it, how much of what they put in, right? So it's going to be pretty off. So I never personally like to search the meal itself. Does that make sense? Even if it's like a popular food chain, I don't typically like to, unless it's like very generic, like a McDonald's McChicken or right, like For example, obviously we don't eat that much, right? But just using something super like the fast food that's like super generic, it's always exactly the same. Like McDonald's chicken nuggets, for example, are always going to be exactly the freaking same. But like a burrito bowl could look different every time. So what I personally like to do is it's a little more tedious, but it will be more accurate than if you Googled like a Chipotle burrito bowl, chicken burrito, not Googled, MyFitnessPal, and put it in. I would deconstruct the meal and add item by item. So you can even say Chipotle chicken. I'm sure that'll pop up. And then you can add that in and maybe do it per cups, like if that's more visual for you, or if you're really more experienced with tracking and can kind of estimate how many grams that is or ounces, then you can do that. And then I would add in like the guac separately and the rice separately and whatever. So you have like an itemized list of ingredients for the meal rather than searching for the meal in the app. I think that's going to be the most accurate way to go. And then when it comes to like restaurant meals, for example, I would always like, let's say you went out for a steak, for example, Texas Roadhouse. Okay. Um, I would always add about 20% more calories of that meal. So let's say a Texas Roadhouse steak, baked potato, and vegetables, let's say on the like menu, because here in the US, like most menus will itemize the calorie intake for that meal. I would still deconstruct the meal, like I said, and see if it's kind of accurate to what they've said. If you find it's under, typically what I would say is for any restaurant meal, add about 20% of calories. So if it's 1,000 calories, right, of the meal, that's what's suggested, or that's what kind of comes up, add another 20%, another 200 calories. It might seem like a big overestimate, but it's not really, because something to consider when eating out in restaurants in particular is they want to make your food taste really, really good. So they cook in a lot of oils and butters, like even your steak is cooked in butter typically. So these are all things to consider. That fat in content of that meal is going to be a lot higher than probably what you think it is. Probably extra 20 grams of fat in there easily, depending on the meal. So that's just something to kind of think about when you're eating out. So two things: deconstructing the meals and kind of accounting for 10 to 20% more calories than what you think it actually is probably going to be the more accurate amount. And that's why if you guys are eating out a lot, especially when you're in a calorie deficit, it can really hinder your progress. So you're like, I'm not making progress on the scale, but you're eating out 3 days a week. I don't like to say cut out eating out, like keep it in as long as it's working, right? And you're still making the progress. But if you get to a point where I'm not making the progress I want to make and you're doing everything to a T, it's like, well, where is the variables? Like what you have to take out all aspects of variation. So that's when I'd say, okay, take out eating out, even just for 1 week and see the difference. And if you notice a big drop on the scale, okay, you're probably not accurately calculating those meals. Which doesn't mean that you're not trying to be accurate. It just means it's just variation that happens that we don't really account for unless you're like a master tracker that's been tracking food for a very long time. It took me a long time to build up that skill, and it is a skill. And then second part to that question is what to eat when you're out and hungry. Like, well, it depends. Again, it depends. Like, are we talking like I wish I had this person on the call. It depends because let's say I'm hungry and just need to be tied over to dinner, I might quickly stop at a gas station and grab a protein bar or a protein shake. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have my next meal. But I'm assuming this is more like we're eating out at a restaurant. Like, what do we eat? Well, you've got two choices. Okay. You've got, do I eat in line with my goals, or am I eating for pleasure today? A combo of both. It can be both, right? Let's use an Italian restaurant, for example. This is a good one. This is always like a pretty regular one. They have a range of a lot of things, right? Most Italian places will have like pizzas, pastas, but then you've also maybe got like salads and seafood and like grilled things, steak, right? So there's a combo of things. So when you're looking at a restaurant like that, you could opt for, all right, something that's more of a balanced plate. So then there's the plate method. If you guys haven't gone over the plate method, go back into the trainings. The plate method is there. Okay. So visually, then you'd be like, am I getting protein, a little bit of carbs, and majority are vegetables in this meal? Like that would be the aim, to eat more probably in line with your goals, protein intake, fiber, more balanced. Is that like that's something that can be front of mind when you're ordering a meal? Or am I eating for pleasure today? And order whatever you want, right? What's the trade-off though? So if you're ordering whatever you want, is it going to put you over your calorie deficit? Are you okay with that? If you're okay with that and knowing it's going to slow down progress this week, that's fine. So it's fine to make the choice as long as you're okay with the outcome. And it's like, what is my need right now? So I'll give you an example. When we were in New Jersey a few weeks ago, New Jersey pizza is like the best pizza I've ever had in my life, particularly at certain places that we've been to. My husband used to live in New Jersey, and I lived there for about 8 months before we moved. When I first came to the US, so I had a lot of pizza. Um, we went to New Jersey recently, and I was like, I don't come to Jersey often. We maybe go once a year or every 2 years. So I'm having the damn pizza because I want to eat for pleasure today. I don't care. This is for the experience. So my choice was the pizza, but also we were really hungry. We'd walked a lot that day. I'd had like one meal and a snack, so I'd barely eaten. So then in that case, I was like, well, I'm gonna order a small kind of appetizer chicken house salad. Just to get a little bit of protein, a little bit of veggies in me, and so I don't go YOLO on the pizza because I'm starving. And then I also had the pizza. I had a ginormous, if you guys saw the picture, it's like the slice was the size of my arm. Like I'm not even joking. I had a slice of pizza. It's very full after. So that's kind of an example of, well, I'm hungry, kind of gonna fuel my body a little bit, and I want to eat for pleasure today, and I'm okay with that. It's gonna pop me way over where I kind of should be, but at the end of the day, I'm on a vacation. It's one day, and I'm good with that. So I just think it really depends. So I think this topic and that question probably needs to be taken into talked about in more depth. And if you ask that question, throw some more follow-up questions in Telegram. And I think we should do a proper training on just that one. Because that was a really, really good question and a really good topic to talk about. But I think it really depends more so on the specific scenarios. It'd be great if we kind of came up with some different scenarios. Oh, this is from somebody who is not in this program, but it's a really good, I think it's a really good question with somebody who's like more of a beginner and just starting their journey. It says, do you have any hacks, lifestyle habits that have worked for you? For example, exercising before breakfast, drinking hot water and lemon upon waking, fasting for 12 hours or more, no carbs after 7 p.m. Like all of those rules, right? All of those wellness hacks and rules and whatnot. Short answer, yes and no. Okay. But it's not what you think. So let me elaborate on that. I think all of like those points that were listed, right? Like, for example, exercising before breakfast or drinking lemon water, all that stuff. It's like, well, at the end of the day, like, what's the outcome? The hack is got to be relevant to the goal. I'm assuming it's for fat loss just because, most people come here for fat loss. But in general, right? Any of these hacks, so to speak, do them if it makes your life easier. The lemon water one is if you just like lemon in your water, drink lemon water. Like you don't have to drink lemon water. It doesn't do anything magical, right? If you like it and if it helps digestion, for example, or it just makes you feel good, whatever, it's not going to help with fat loss. But in terms of lifestyle habits, like exercising before breakfast, I'll break it down per each one, right? Exercise whenever you can exercise. Simple. Like don't overthink it. Exercise at the time of the day that you're one able to get it in, right? And if that's you're like, I only have this time to get it in, I'm going to get it in here, then that's your only option. Get it done at whatever time that is. If you have more flexibility and you're like, I could train in the morning or in the afternoon, for example, you could make a choice. I would say exercise at the time where you have the most energy. So if you're like, I could either train before work or after work, for example, but after work you're just like death and you just don't want to do anything, then get it done in the morning. If you're not a morning person, get it done in the evening. Like it's really up to you when you can get it done. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Same goes for cardio, you guys. Like that fasted versus not fasted, just honestly get it done when you can get it done. The end result with your calorie deficit and fat loss is going to be the same. Okay. And get it done where you feel the most recovered if you have the luxury of that, right? So, for example, if I'm doing a training session in the evening, I might not want to do a training session again the next morning, or my body might need more time to recover. But again, if you don't have a choice and it's more like these are the only time slots I have available, then just get it done when you can get it done. Does the source of carbs matter? So, at the end of the day, when we're looking at fat loss, does does it matter where it comes from to achieve fat loss? The short answer is no. Like, as long as you're in a deficit, like I could just eat Twinkies all day and achieve fat loss. And that's been done. I don't know if you guys know about the study with the Twinkie diet, but literally, there was a professor that ate Twinkies. I can't remember for the duration. I have to go to relook it up. It's been a while for his whole entire fat loss phase and multivitamins just to make sure he had his micronutrients, and lost a whole bunch of weight, and the world went mad about it. So essentially, yes, you can, and his blood work actually improved, like everything was really good. I'm sure his digestion probably sucked, but I don't know if there's any mention of that. So short answer is no, like it doesn't matter, but then we do have like nuances, right? The little details of what makes you feel your best, and are you hitting a certain amount of fiber in the day? So, and what's making you feel fuller? So, for example, I could get, let's say, if I was on 200 grams of carbs a day, well, that's roughly what I was eating. I could eat cereal all day and just get it from that. But I know if I just ate cereal all day as a carbohydrate source, I'd be pretty freaking hungry because it's like just not fibrous and filling. Unless it was maybe Cheerios, but let's think of one that's more like a chocolatey, like I don't know, Cocoa Pebbles or something. Um, or Fruit Loops if you're in my Australians. Right? So it's not going to keep you full. So you have to look at it as what's better, what's a hack. Well, if you ate most of your carbs from like potatoes, you're going to feel pretty full and satisfied, and they're delicious anyway. You can cook them in so many different ways. So you just have to look at it that way. Like, are my carb sources keeping me full and satisfied? Is it allowing me to still have some fun stuff? Like, add in the fun stuff always, for sure. Like, I think that's the important part of the journey, to keep it you sane. But does the carb source matter? Yeah, like it just depends on what makes you feel really good. And I would always encourage you guys to look at how much fiber you're having per day. And if it's low, if it's too low, like you're not going to be able to use the bathroom. If it's too high, you probably won't be able to use the bathroom and you'll experience bloating. So these are things to consider. And that's where I would then say I'll alter your carbohydrate sources depending on like those factors. Yeah, so the second part to that question is, if you're hitting 100, like your protein goal for the day, then how would you divide what comes from fruits versus starches, like a bagel? So like, I guess unprocessed versus more processed nutrient dense foods versus less nutrient dense foods, right? So again, like I think I just kind of broke it down that way. It's just like, I would say, as a general rule of thumb, you don't have to do this as a rule, but as a guide, I guess, guideline, the rules, we're not about rules here, is have about 80% of your total calories for the day come from more whole foods, more nutrient dense foods, to keep you fuller for longer, get you micronutrients, like make you feel better. And then about 20% of your total calories could come from bagels and fun stuff. But again, if you have a whole wheat bagel, it's that, like, where's the line, right? So whatever makes you feel your best, you can split it up any way you kind of like. Does it matter for fat loss? No, but again, I want you guys to focus on what makes you feel your best. Let me see. The fasting, again, fasting's a whole other topic, but you don't have to fast to achieve fat loss. Some people it's helpful, some people it's not. It's more about like what's easier for you. For me, I don't eat the first second I wake up in the morning because I have two little munchkins to take care of first. So you could say I fast, but I don't really. I just wait like an hour or two, sometimes three max, before I eat, before I wake up, but I have a coffee. Um, and then I eat. So it's not like, not like a proper fast. It's just because that suits my lifestyle at the moment with the kids. So if fasting makes you feel better in general, great, but you're still getting like your calorie intake, your protein intake, and all of those things, and protein spread evenly throughout that time. The no carbs after 7 p.m. is dumb. Don't ever do that. You don't need to do that. It's just, the only thing I would say is, there is no specific time to have to cut off food, any type of food before bed. All I would say is think about how you feel. So some people, and the size of the meal might impact this too. So for some people, if they eat too close to bedtime and your body's still digesting that food, obviously it's going to keep digesting over the whole night. But if you're like digesting that food primarily, like let's say I ate a giant meal and went and laid down for bed, probably not going to feel that good. Sometimes it can impact sleep, and you might feel bloated in the morning, for example. So those are things to pay attention to. So if that's you, then I would say we'll try to eat an hour before bed, 2 hours before bed, or have dinner earlier, then have a smaller snack closer to bedtime. So those are all things that you can experiment with to see what makes you feel, again, what makes you feel your best, because everybody is different in that sense. Okay, I'm going to talk about this one because I had this question and also somebody asked me relation to this. So the question here is, how does eating more food make you lose weight? I've never eaten so much and lost weight. It's great. That is one of you who is on a reverse diet right now. And then I had someone else ask me last night, like, what is a reverse diet and what does it actually look like? So, okay, I'm going to break it down here because I think everyone would benefit from hearing this. So essentially, at some point, you have to eat more food, okay? Especially after a calorie deficit, you can't just keep eating on the deficit forever. So after the deficit, we have to focus on a recovery phase. And that is called a reverse diet, or AKA we add more food back in slowly. Okay. So a reverse diet, or think of it as a recovery phase where your body adapts to the deficit initially, right? So when we're in a calorie deficit, our calories get lower and lower and lower as our body adapts to those calories. It makes changes to adapt. And then that becomes your new normal. So for example, if you were on a maintenance of say 2000 calories and then you ended your deficit on like 1400 to 1500 calories, your body get used to that. Eventually that will be your new maintenance because you're losing body fat. Your body's adapting to that. And what happens is your body conserves energy to adapt to that. And it will conserve energy in different ways that you might not notice. So it might be as simple as, I'm not going to like fidget as much. So I'm talking like I talk a lot with my hands and I'm fidgety. So I might, instead of being like fidgety and speaking to you guys, I might just be kind of like this and not moving. And it's hard to blink because my body's conserving that energy. It might be more challenging to go and just walk to the mailbox and you're like, ugh. Whereas if you're eating more food, it's like easier to go. So all of these ways our body conserves energy in a deficit. So that's why it's super, super important that once you finish your calorie deficit or you're kind of close to your goal or a place where things feel good, you cannot just stop there and go back to eating normally because you will gain weight back very, very rapidly for the most part if you go back eating normally, and you can't eat in a deficit forever because it sucks and it's not healthy to do that long term, right? It's miserable. After a while, it's miserable. Okay. So we have to do something called a reverse diet, and a reverse diet just doesn't involve calorie intake increasing. But if you towards the end of your deficit are doing quite a bit of cardio and HIIT training, we kind of want to reduce that a little bit more as well and get that down a little bit more. So you're not doing anything crazy. We want to get you back to a sustainable, comfortable level. So what do? We add food little by little over time. We might do an initial like small increase of calories, allow your body to adapt to that. And then we start to add more calories depending on how your body responds slowly over time. It is a slow process. Typically, I would say the length of your deficit should be the length of your reverse diet, or at least half the length, right? So let's say you're in a deficit for 6 months. It happens, right? Let's say 6 months. Your minimum reverse diet time should be 3 months, typically. For most people, it takes longer. Might take a little longer than that. So we want to add food back slowly over time, reduce some training to get you to a point where you have new maintenance calories. We figure out where that sits for you. And then training feels really, really good. So what happens is, how come I'm eating more food and losing weight? So some people with a reverse diet will lose more weight initially, not through the whole thing. Some people have lost weight through the whole thing. They're more of like that outlier, not the norm. But a lot of people do initially lose a little bit more body fat. And that is because the reason that happens is we have something called NEAT. So NEAT is stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, the all the energy you burn when you're not exercising, in a nutshell, that's what that means. So that's why like our step goals are really important. Like, are you moving throughout the whole day on top of your training sessions, or are you just training 3 hours a week and sitting the rest of the week, right? That's a big difference of movement and how much energy our body burns. So when we add more food back, remember in the deficit, our bodies are trying to conserve energy. When we add more food back, you actually start like fidgeting more, moving more, maybe putting more effort, energy into your workouts. Like we're actually then expending more energy because we're getting more. So sometimes even when we add food back initially, it puts that person back into a deficit because their energy output increases actually by default. So that's kind of what is happening, right? When we're adding more food back in. Again, everybody is different. So don't listen to this and go, that's how my body is going to respond. Everyone responds differently. And that's why with a reverse diet, it's important to take things slow and really work with the person and how their body's responding and also how they're feeling mentally, right? Sometimes it can be really hard I think the reverse diet is harder mentally than a deficit because the scale isn't going down for the most part and you have to add food back in. It's kind of really hard to stick to. But if you do it properly, that's the key to really sustaining your results long term. Like, obviously, you guys are learning a lot of skills in your deficit to sustain long term all of our eating skills, but the more calories we can add back in as well, the more wiggle room we have to play with calories, and then we can add in more eating skills and potentially intuitive eating skills as well over time. That would be the goal. So hopefully that makes sense with a reverse diet and why you can maybe add more food in and lose weight. So you see those posts on like social media where it's like, added more food and I lost 10 pounds. It's like, well, what's really going on? Like, what's the whole picture, right? Like, what's the whole context? You got to look at everything. But if you're somebody who's like been dieting and been in a deficit for a very long time, you maybe have done like some pretty not damage. You saw people will say my metabolism's damaged. It's not. It's just very, very adapted sometimes to low calorie intake. So that's where a reverse diet and that recovery phase becomes really important to implement. And that's really difficult because typically those people are already in a place where their body feels uncomfortable in terms of body fat. It's like, hey, your body's fighting against this deficit, or mentally it's a challenge because you've just been dieting for so long. We really need to implement a reverse diet now and set you up for a successful fat loss phase next time. So that's really a difficult. I've been in that place before. That's probably the most challenging place I've ever been in. But if you implement that properly and just think, okay, what's 3 to 4 months or 6 months of discomfort in the grand scheme of things? It's nothing. It's like literally the reset your body will need. So, and sometimes it takes a few rounds of fat loss, reverse diet to get your kind of metabolic rate to a better place. Then you can maybe lose fat or more calories the next time. Our body responds better and we recover again. So each recovery phase, we try to improve like where you're at. And some people will do that recovery phase and go, I feel good here. I'm good to sit here. And then that's great too. So there's lots of different scenarios there, but I think it's really important to implement at some point and always after a deficit. That's why you see those people who are like, I can really like lose the weight every time, but I regain it. So we need to, listen, you guys, I've seen it time and time again where I've had clients end with me on a deficit. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go. And I'm just like, just do the reverse diet. Just spend 3 months because that is the difference between you regaining things back and not. Like I've seen it, and then more often than not, they'll come back and say, I just regained everything, and they'll have to start all over again. So it's just something to really think about. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. That's it. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did and you want to see more content from behind the scenes of the Thrive 365 Academy, make sure you let me know by dropping a comment below, DMing me on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm here every Friday moving forward and really excited to have you guys along for the journey.